bit more. You've been inside that isolation chamber. Tell us a little bit more about it and what the prognosis is for Dr. Brantley right now.
Well, you know, Dr. Brantley was supposedly very ill when he was in Africa, but seeing him walk out of that ambulance is a very positive sign. I've spoken to one of the doctors who's on the team that's taking care of him. There are 4 infectious disease specialists, 2 highly trained nurses. They'll be wearing that same kind of protective gear that we've been seeing to take care of him, but they'll be able to monitor him much closer, give him fluids, give him blood transfusions, give him the kind of care that was not available in Liberia.
And Dr. Frieden, as you know, a lot of anxiety here in the United States about the spread of Ebola, whether we're taking an unnecessary risk. I want to show a tweet that Donald Trump put out just the other day. He said that the U.S. must immediately stop all flights from Ebola-infected countries or the plague will start and spread inside our borders. Act fast. How do you respond to that?
Well, Ebola is scary, and it's understandable that with a deadly disease, people are concerned, but the plain truth is that we can stop Ebola. We know how to control it. Hospital infection control and stopping it at the source in Africa. You know, we're not going to hermetically seal the borders of the U.S. We're reliant and interdependent with the world for travel, for trade, for economy, for our families and communities. But really, the single most important thing we can do to protect Americans is to stop this disease at the source in Africa.
But Dr. Frieden, is it safe right now to send CDC workers into Africa?
Well, we are surging our response, and we're going to put 50 staff on the ground in these 3 countries to help stop the outbreak in the next 30 days. And we put safety first. Staff have experienced some hostility from groups that are so upset, we immediately withdraw them. And we make sure that if we're taking care of patients with Ebola, we have the proper gear so that the risk of infection is kept to the absolute minimum.
And Rich, there is a concern if the world is responding effectively to this crisis, which is spreading throughout West Africa right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big concern. The World Health Organization put out a plan, a statement that $100 million are needed to control this. I've talked to public health experts who say that that's a gross underestimate of what it will take. Public health traditionally lowballs the figure. But there are 2 reasons. There's a humanitarian reason for stopping this in West Africa, but the conversation we've been having also shows we have a self-interest in doing that. And the conversation really has to look at what will it take to beef up the health system to control this where it is.
In September, is there promise there, and what's the block to getting it out more quickly?
We would love an Ebola vaccine. It would be very helpful, especially to protect healthcare workers. But even in the best case, it's a long way away, and it's uncertain. What is certain is that we know how to stop Ebola now. And really, the tried and true public health mechanisms work. You find the patients. You isolate them. You find out who their contacts were. You trace the contacts. You track them every day for 21 days. If they get fever, you start that process again. You make sure there's good infection control, and you educate the community in Africa about safe burial practices. When you do those simple things, Ebola stops, as every previous Ebola outbreak has been stopped. But right now, it's out of control in West Africa, and it may well spread further in that region. What we can do, and what we're doing, is surging our response to put out the embers, because Ebola is really like a forest fire. If you leave one ember burning, it can flare up again. That's why it's so important that we control it.